Tonight we have Peter Thomas with us, who's going to be talking about building self-belief and resilience in young people, which I'm sure we're all really excited to hear from Peter. Before we do jump straight in, I'm just going to go over a couple of housekeeping things. So first and foremost, we are on Teams Live today, which means that hopefully you can hear and see us okay, but we can't actually hear and see you. There has been some technical issues we've been made aware of with Microsoft Teams today. Fingers crossed that is finished. It shouldn't affect us this evening, but if we do have any technical problems, I'll be in touch via email, and we are recording the session, so it'll be available afterwards as well. So please don't worry, you will get to see the session. But hopefully that won't be an issue and we'll sail through nice and calmly this evening. If you do have any questions for Peter throughout the presentation, if you can please use the Q&A function, which should be in one of the top corners of your devices, and fire over any questions that you have during the presentation, and Peter will answer those at the end. That would be fantastic. And just to let you know as well, we are running sessions throughout the rest of the week. So if after today and you've really enjoyed the session this evening, please do take a look at our events calendar, where we have other keynote speakers. We have a session on adversity and trauma. We have UCAS delivering another session on Thursday as well. So please do take a look if you enjoyed tonight's session. But I will stop talking now, because I know you've all come to hear from Peter, not from me. So I'll hand over to Peter Thomas.
Okay, thanks very much, Jade. Thank you. And just like to say hello to everybody. Thanks for taking the time to join myself this evening and for overcoming the issues with Microsoft. I'm sure you've had incredibly busy days. And I just hope that if you're able to take, one thing today from this talk that makes a difference to one teacher's practice, or to give an opportunity to a young person that they wouldn't have had, from my perspective, it's certainly been worthwhile. So I'm just going to try and share with you now the presentation here. Hopefully you can see that okay, Jade. And I'm just going to take you through, first of all, a little bit about myself before talking about the charity Building Self-Belief and the work we do with young people across the Northeast, really. Okay, so first of all, my name is Peter Thomas, and I've got 25 years of teaching and school leadership experience. Beginning
Peter, sorry, can you just make your presentation big screen? Can you pop it on?
Yeah, okay. Okay.
Great, thank you.
There we go, thank you. So my name's Peter Thomas, with 25 years teaching and school leadership experience, beginning in the East End in London, where I'm from, and moving up about 2001 to work in schools in Blyth, Seaton Delaval in the Northeast, and many years in Wallsend. I now support leadership across schools in England, and do a lot of work on my true love, which is history as well, supporting teachers to improve in those areas. And I've always really been deeply committed to extracurricular activities and the benefits that those wider opportunities can have for young people, especially in terms of their character development and future opportunity. I think Ofsted like to call it the cultural capital that I believe is really important, that we give young people that opportunity to develop that. It can be quite amazing, really, how very small things that we do in our everyday careers working with young people can affect them. I'm just going to give you a quick example. When I was a young boy, I lived with my grandfather, and he had been a soldier in World War II and gave me lots of stories. And so I was really into history. And when I went to secondary school in the early 80s, I was very excited about this. And I can remember my first history lesson, I was at the back of the room and we were studying Saxon village life. And we had homework to go away and write a story. And I sat down, I wrote an 8-page story. It's probably the most writing I've ever done to this day, probably. Lovely picture to go with it. And I think I must have been ill or something on the Friday when it was due to be handed in. I can't remember for sure, but anyway, went into the school on the following day, and I collared the history teacher, Mr. Hewitt. I hope he's not tuned in this evening. And I said, here you go, sir, here's my history essay on the Saxon village. And he took it from, it was an old Victorian school, quite a steep staircase. And so he took it, walked up a couple of stairs, and I walked down. He said, hang on a minute, Peter. And he turned around and he threw the book down the stairs into my face. You could never get away with it nowadays, quite rightly. And he said, don't give that to me. I'm not marking it. It's a day late. 3 years on in my history lessons, I never did a day's work. I had a detention pretty much every single lesson. And it was only when I did my options, and this will date me, which is the first year for GCSE options, that I was forced into doing history, which had become my sworn enemy because of the way I was treated in that 3 seconds by my history teacher. Well, I got a very inspiring history teacher for my GCSE, and the rest was history. And I think if I was to talk to Mr. Hewitt and say, look, you know, you really affected me, so here I am as a 40-something remembering that story, I doubt it would even cross his mind how significant those little things can be. But they can be very significant indeed. So I think it's very important that when we're doing things for young people, we're as positive and as committed to them in all that we do as it's possible to be. I was very fortunate that my passion in creating opportunities for young people was recognised through the Centre for Life as one of their teacher fellows, and by the wonderful Teesside University through the work I did as a director of sixth form, encouraging students to move into higher education. And I believe very much that you know, opportunity is key in life. So certainly when it comes to higher education visits, meeting current and past students, having proper understanding of the advantages and disadvantages that higher education can bring is absolutely key in giving them a proper rounded understanding of the decision that they will make. Educationally, in 2014, again, I was very lucky in working with an amazing teaching and learning team and heading up a teaching and learning team that in a school in North Tyneside that was awarded by Ofsted Outstanding in all categories. And we were lucky enough to get a National Teaching Award for our work. And in 2016, I went on to work as a teaching and learning consultant across the country. And what this began to do was to give me an insight into issues that I could see that were affecting young people, but being repeated in school after school that I worked in. And so I decided to found a charity called Building Self-Belief CIO, which our website details will be, I'm sure Jade will share them with you. And we aim really to support younger people in building better futures for themselves. And today I'm speaking in that capacity. Okay, before I take you on to the work that we do specifically, I'll give you a little bit of background. So as an organisation, this was our formal launch by the Lord Lieutenant of County Durham, a lovely lady called Sue Snowden. And we support young people at times of transition. So year 5, 6 primary school, about year 11 and also year 13. And we help them with personal issues around their emotional well-being. It could be related to bereavement, building and sustaining friendships, domestic circumstance. And we engage with them in 3-month programs to build their confidence and also to develop them as members of their local communities. We engage with these young people before they are referred to CAMS, so Children and Mental Health Services. So the idea is it's an early intervention at times where there can be worries for young people, times of transition, and we focus on employability, self-esteem and community-based projects. Ultimately to build, as you can see, their stronger communities. Why self-esteem? Well, when I was considering beginning the charity, I did a fair bit of research and began to put some data to the things, the anecdotes and the things I was seeing in front of me at schools and colleges. I'm just going to give you a bit of information. So low self-esteem can have a significant impact on an individual's ability to cope with their daily experiences and interactions with others. So this is what the academics say. It has potential to impact on physical, intellectual, emotional and social experiences of people who, as a result of low self-esteem, can become isolated, self-critical, low in mood, and then vulnerable to developing other mental health difficulties. So our charity is based at trying to prevent these things. Low self-esteem is a factor in unemployment. People who have experienced low self-esteem have generally fewer economic prospects and are less likely to remain in school or attend university. Intervention in teenage years can be very influential. Adolescence is being a crisis point where young people reassess their self-worth. So that's why we work again at those periods of transition where young people are most vulnerable. And findings show that adolescents with low self-esteem can grow up to have more mental health problems during adulthood, 1.2 times more likely to have depressive disorders and 1.6 times more likely to experience anxiety-related disorders. So the work that we're doing is really designed to be preemptive and to support young people, to give them opportunities and to develop that self-esteem and confidence before some of their behaviours, their negative behaviours, become ingrained. Okay. Now, I know one or two of you are not necessarily from the Northeast. We are centrally at a Northeast. We do a lot of our work in the Northeast, but I'm just going to give you some of the context, and of course you can adapt this to the area that you may be working in. So the Northeast, where we specifically work, is very much affected by child poverty. So it has the second highest rate of child poverty in the UK, marginally underneath London. It's seen the biggest recent rise in child poverty in the years 2015 to 2019. All 12 of the councils in the northeast are areas which saw the highest increases in child poverty, again in that same time period. And of the 20 parliamentary constituencies which saw the highest increase in child poverty in that period, half of them are in the northeast. And one of the frustrations, especially as a Londoner and someone who learned to teach and taught mostly in the late 90s in London, was there was a challenge, an initiative that was London focused in the 1990s called London Challenge, which was designed to deal with underperformance in schools. And I must have seen this reinvented and plonked on the northeast on kind of 3-year intervals, not working, reshaped and plonked on the northeast again. Although the challenge that London faced in the 90s bears very little resemblance to the challenge that the northeast faces today. And it's out of that frustration that we began our work. Another statistic here for you, again for the northeast context. So among state school youngsters who are not on free school meals, 45% go on to higher education by the age of 19. That's 26% with free school meals. If a young person's from a Black African family on free school meals, it's 52%. Black Caribbean, 24%. If you're a white British male and you receive free school meals, it's 13% of that quotient will go on to higher education. So you actually have more chance if you're in council care and have English as a second language than a white British male. For the demographics in certain areas of the northeast, that is a very, very pressing issue. I've put on the bottom of the slide where this data comes from. I'm sure Jade will be able to share that with us in due course. So where do we work? The areas that we focus on as a charity are in what's called the bottom 20% of the National Index of Multiple Deprivation. And again, I've put a link on the slide here for you. This is a government index, a comparative index that compares income, employment, education, skills and training, health, disability, crime, barriers to housing, the living environment, so how green and pleasant the area is in which people live, and income affecting children and older people. And these statistics are compiled on a 4-year basis. The last statistics are for 2019. And there are measures for each individual area of deprivation and an overall measure. If you can see on the right hand side of the slide, the darker the blue area, the more the socio-economic deprivation. So the particularly dark areas on the map are towards the top. That's particularly in areas like North Tyneside, where we run projects. There's a little cluster around Sunderland, and where the red star is, that's the postcode for Teesside University. If we took, just as an example, the postcode for Teesside University itself, I think Jade, TS13BX, I'm sure you're familiar with that. This is where that area would lay in the index of national multiple deprivation. It's in the bottom 10% of the most deprived areas in the country. And that's for income, education, skills and training. That's despite there being a university there. This is for local young people in that ward. Child poverty, poverty amongst elder people, health and disability and crime. It's in the bottom 20% for employment and barriers to housing, and is the bottom 40% for living environment, probably because there's more green space. So just as a random example, as an area in the northeast, the university itself, where that is actually located, is an area that faces multiple challenges. And you can see by the shading on the map that that is repeated in many areas. And I'll tell you some of the projects that we've got running there shortly. That postcode for Teesside, for example, would be 1032nd in terms of deprivation out of nearly 33 council wards in the country. And it would be 16th out of 317 local authorities for overall deprivation. So it just gives you a little bit of context. We run programs currently, and I'll take you through 3 of them in a moment, in areas, if you're familiar with them, at one area called the Meadowwell Estate, which is in North Tyneside. That's in the bottom 1% of national multiple deprivation. We recently did a primary school project. It was around the Great War and the local war memorial with primary school children, wonderful children from a school called Towlaw Millennium Primary School, up in the hills in County Durham, bottom 10% of national deprivation. We have a project running in Redhill Ward in Sunderland, bottom 10% of deprivation. So there are many, many areas up here that face socio-economic challenges, and we're trying to help the young people that may come up against those barriers. Just before we get to the projects themselves, this is back to my days as head of teaching and learning. You may be doing things in lesson, I would say, but how do you know they're making any difference? How do you know there's an impact to them? So when we run our programs, we use recognised self-esteem measures. So we use the revised Children's Anxiety and Depression Scale, which is called RCADS, and a Rosenberg self-esteem analysis. So these are done via questionnaires that the young people would do at the beginning of our programs. They would complete them at the end, and we would gauge the progress. And these are independently analysed by a child psychologist. We also work with young people, and they produce films of the project that they do, all part of it in developing their experiences, and you can see some of those on our website. To the top left of the slide here, we also produce a social return on investment analysis. So we are funded externally, we have to bid for funds or raise them ourselves, and we can quantify and attempt to quantify using a business model really that for every pound we spend supporting young people, there are knock-on benefits for the community, the school, NHS, national economy. So if any of you are interested in working and doing some programs with us, or even finding out how we work and perhaps doing your own type of programs, it's Ofsted proof, and it can really demonstrate impact, and we've had great success with the work that we've done. Okay, I'm just going to share then 3 programs with you, all varied, where young people are from deprived areas, and we're trying to kind of build these community links, build the opportunity for the young people in the future. Okay. Right, so this is project number 1. This was a 12-week project, and it was one of the first ones we did with Concert Academy. There were 10 young students who had recently suffered recent bereavement or issues related to significant loss. Because we've got a lot of experience working in schools, we work directly with the pastoral team to identify the appropriate students, right? And we tend to work in kind of groups of around 10, which is about the optimum for that. We stress to the schools, it's not just a group for, you don't just find your 10 naughtiest students and put them in the group to work with them to give the teachers a break. The students can have behaviour challenges. They may not have behaviour challenges, but it's around self-esteem and self-confidence. We work with the young people to look at issues that they felt that affected them. So the issues around loss, self-confidence, body image, making and sustaining friendships, which is an issue that crops up a lot, developing trust with others. 1 or 2 of the young people, they hadn't necessarily personally suffered bereavement, but that they had parents who were in prison. And so the issue with that was it's a sense of bereavement. It leaves that sense of loss, and how do you cope with that? Our programs have a variety of workshops, and the young people kind of select and opt into the areas that they feel affect them the most. So we don't just turn up at the school and do the program to young people. And I think that's right in whatever you're doing educationally. If you're just doing things to young people, you can sometimes get resistance. The greater the buy-in, usually the greater the success. Each of our programs, therefore, is slightly different because it's designed to meet individual needs, and these needs are supported or identified by the pastoral teams. With this program, we found that because it was related to bereavement, one of the things that we hadn't really reflected on was that a lot of the issues that the young people had was the reaction that their wider family had to the bereavement. So 1 or 2 of them were very, very overprotected by their parents, very understandably, because of issues that had happened. And then those young people were, 1 or 2 of them were perhaps not allowed out to join clubs or to go on school trips and to do activities because there was that worry and that wider family fear. 1 or 2 of them had additional caring responsibilities that had developed. And as I say, 1 or 2 were dealing with, a family member in prison and the multitude of issues that would bring. So we endeavour to give them reflection time, opportunities to build and sustain friendships, and just opportunities to shine, really. One of the activities that they opted in to do, you can see in the top right, was high ropes, and they thought it would be good for teamwork and leadership and friendships. And with our encouragement, absolutely right. We always do that kind of team building event, and we do a cultural event. This was obviously pre-COVID. The young people went to the Theatre Royal in Newcastle to see a play called, or a musical called Kinky Boots. I don't know if you've ever seen Kinky Boots, really entertaining. They really, really loved it. And it's a musical about family expectations, okay, about one person continuing a family business and the resistance. And so we could use the cultural experiences around the team building and around the theatre and build that into the issues that we were looking at as part of the programme. We're going on a bit of time, obviously, to feedback, and I've just got a little bit of feedback here from you. Just picked a few quotes that we used in our summary report. So first, I'm glad I did the high ropes. It was an achievement to finish them. I heard others had issues, not just me. I can now use a tin opener, tie my shoes, make a cup of tea, use a knife and fork. The person, the lad who gave us that quote, was one of 15. He was the middle child of a family of 15 siblings. And when you look at it in that context, he was relatively academically bright, but I would expect that by the time you're on to your 7th child, you know, out of a family of 15, physically having the time to teach your child to make a cup of tea and to use a knife and fork, meals were on the hoof. They didn't have a table big enough to feed everyone. These are simple things that emerged as part of the programme that we could relatively easily sort out, but it'll make a difference to that young person going forward. You're always learning in education, aren't you? It's been a great experience, especially having the chance to hear the problems of others and to realise that mine are not that bad. I know I'm not alone in feeling the way that I do. So perspective on the issues that these young people face, realising that they're not the only person in the world, they're not alone in the challenges that they face, and that they can share their experiences and learn from the experiences of others. That was really important as something that came out of this. I really enjoyed the high ropes. I took the leadership role to help Jack. It's the first time I've ever experienced being a leader, and it felt great. As a result of the course, we actually had young people and we got them signed up to one now as air cadets, first aid, like the Red Cross volunteer, and one goes and supports his local boxing club. Right, had a real passion for boxing, and we got him tied up and working there as well. So we're trying to get them continue that development in the community. I now feel better about myself and haven't had to walk lately. This was a young lad who had issues, and when he got particularly stressed, he would walk and go home and then walk straight past his front door and just walk and walk and walk. And then there were issues around safety and where they were. And we looked at strategies around the frustration, really, that was really about, the worry and frustration, and how to apply that in different ways that didn't create such panic and loss and worry in the family. And that's what he's referring to there by not having to walk just lately. On the right hand side, you can see we're funded by the County Durham Community Foundation, and as I say, all of our projects are externally funded, and you can see the news there was very supportive of our work to encourage. And from that, we had lots and lots of contacts from other schools and other community partners wanting to get involved, and we've just grown and grown. The picture was interesting, actually. That was at the end of the high ropes. You can see it's black sky. There was pretty much a hurricane that came in about 3 seconds after that picture. So we managed to get away with it. But those lads are fantastic, and we don't run the program with them still, but we're still in touch with their development and progress via the school. Okay. Can take you on to a second type of program here. This wasn't a bereavement program, but was focused on bridging the gap between education and employment, education and higher education. And it was based in Stanley, a place called ND8, which is one of the 20 most deprived neighbourhoods in the country, based again on the National Index of Multiple Deprivation. Employability was our focus, and the workshops were linked to low employment in the area, low income, and low numbers of young people going on to higher education. So we worked with the director of sixth form, and there you can see Ross in the middle there, sat in the front of the students. We worked with local apprenticeship hubs, local employers, local universities, and to help the young people to develop their employability skills, again from a selection of their choice, in workshops such as appropriate use of social media in the workplace, how to find an apprenticeship, university applications, CV building, communication, public speaking, these types of things. And again, the aim was to improve their community engagement and opportunities for the future. Here you can see an example structure to the program. So again, it would run over a 3-month period, a session per week. It would involve an activity. We've actually got go-karting, and we had outward bounds course booked for them. We've postponed it because of COVID, but that's what we'll be doing. So we've got secrets to workplace success, self-management, planning an event. We always put planning an event as part of the programs that we deliver. So the young lads you saw in the previous program would have had would have picked the theatre trip they would have gone to, would have planned which day they wanted to go and which theatre they wanted to go, etc. We do communication, public skills, initiative and enterprise. Now, with the onset of COVID, obviously we had to change the way 1 or 2 of our operations were done. And we worked with the young people themselves, and we decided to do remote kind of Zoom interaction around employability. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about that one here. So these were a couple of examples that we had. So we had a young lad called Jack, and Jack was year 13. He was completing his level 3 studies, quite an able lad, and he said he wanted to be a security guard at Tesco's. It was absolutely fine if that's what he wanted to be, but it seemed that he was making this decision based on very, very little information. And when we actually talked to him, he said, well, what he was interested in was security. So we did a bit of searching around, used contacts that he wouldn't have had access to, and we found a local employer, a guy called Tim Robson there, who's an events manager and a security expert. Got them on this kind of online connection on Zoom through the NDA as well, the college itself. And Jack began to consider, well, actually what he's interested in is more to do with events and organising and running things, and perhaps much higher than the level of a security guard at Tesco's. He became much more reflective of his capabilities and has put in an application to university to study events management. And ongoing, Tim from Alpha Services Group is giving him that work experience and kind of mentoring to encourage him and give him that opportunity for that. A second case study was Alex, who was, again, a lovely lad, had English as a second language, didn't have a huge amount of confidence and had very limited contacts in the UK, really, but in particular in the world of finance and accounting, which he had a talent for and was interested in. Very quietly spoken with peers and staff alike, but very well liked. He felt additional pressure at school because English was his second language, and it was kind of hindered him to develop his confidence going forward. He also had a very limited understanding of the pathways open to him going forward. As a consequence, after talking it through with the director of sixth form and with Alex himself, we contacted the owner, a guy called Stephen Paul, who's the CEO of, I think it's probably the biggest accountancy, or the most fastest growing accountancy company in the Northeast, called Valued. And Stephen did some one-to-one mentoring with him, offered him some work experience, gave him an opportunity to get a broader understanding about accountancy and finance and the opportunities in that world. And he's now completed his application to university to study accountancy, which is something he may not have gone on to do. So small but personal successes, just giving young people opportunities they may not otherwise have had. Just very briefly going to come on to a third and another type of project that we've delivered. And this is called the Sensory Space Project at a place called Learning for Life. Learning for Life is an absolutely wonderful institution. Again, it's in Derwentside, and it's a special school for young people aged between 18 and 24 who've got severe physical and learning needs. Less than a mile away from that was the local secondary school, and we had year 11 students there who were interested in careers in health and social care, had issues themselves around self-confidence, and so we thought it would be interesting and a valuable thing to do for the community to tie the two up. This special school that does amazing work, the young people around the corner who have an interest in supporting others, let's bring them together, because there was no connection between the two at all. So with some support from the Derwent Valley Area Action Partnership, we took 10 year 11 students from the local academy. They did some community volunteering and some just kind of bond developing work with the young people at Learning for Life. And the idea was it would help to bring the community together. We could work with local businesses as a focus of the project. If you can see on the left-hand side of the slide, there was a room. It was just an empty room, basically. And the idea was that we would support the young girls into fundraising and designing for a new sensory space. And on the right-hand side, we got a list of items. The girls picked a list of items, and local companies sponsored those items that would go into that sensory space once that was developed. So all the way through the program, you're building communities, you're giving the young people ownership, building their skills, developing their volunteering opportunities, and in this instance, we're creating something, a space and equipment that just wasn't there before. So partnership working, it's central to all that we do. And here you can see that the young students went to the disco. It's the last time I've danced in about the last 30 years was at the community disco at the bottom left hand side. Did the bulb planting games. They did community mood boards, created mood boards to develop the overall idea of the sensory space, the young girls from concert and the learners at Learning for Life. And several of them have now become official volunteers at Learning for Life, which is fabulous. And there you can see that's a community cafe. And on the right hand side, you can see during COVID, we did online support, and that was what's called Makaton training, where they do signs and music and sound. So we've adapted those programs. What's come from that is those young people now, many of them have gone on or going on to college to do those health and social related courses. Many are volunteering in the community, and we now have 2 organisations that were a mile apart but could have been about 1,000 miles apart for the links that they had, and now they have this shared experience, and there's something of real benefit for those young learners at Learning for Life there. And we're going to do a formal launch of that when the restrictions lift later in 2021. Here you can see a funder at the top left hand corner, so the community love to get involved, and some young people benefiting from the new sensory space as it is. Okay, I'm just going to spend a bit of time with you now, just the last few minutes or so, just to talk about some of the post-COVID challenges. As organisations, we know how challenging it is coming through COVID. I was doing a lot of teaching, a lot of support online, especially between September and January. I was delivering lessons, supporting an NQT with a year 7 class, and when I would model the teaching, you would get the little messages in the chat box, sorry sir, I've got to go and walk my dog, or sorry sir, I've got to pick my brother up from school, and in only the way year 7s can communicate. But you could see there was kind of a difference between some students who had a parent sat next to them doing the lessons, others who could dip in for 5 minutes, others who were doing it on the phone because they had to do other things. These real differences in learning emerged. This data comes here from the BBC Children in Need, who surveyed all of the organisations that they work with, including us, to collate the impact that COVID has had, and this will affect many of your learners as well. So primarily, pretty unsurprisingly, I think for children and for adults as well, it's that missing of personal connections, the relationship and support from trusted adults and peers outside the home. Right, the fact that people had to retreat, been forced to retreat, and now giving them the confidence, encouraging them to get back out there is an important thing, and we're really working to do that. The emotional wellbeing and mental health challenges around the pandemic had a huge effect on those who already had issues, because anxiety, fear and stress, these issues have been exacerbated for many young people. Family pressure on relationships, where there are issues at home, those pressures and issues tended to build, and if you're stuck at home and there's literally nothing you can access outside, it's very hard for families, parents and children to get respite from those actions. There was, and there's expected to be, an increased exposure to harm. This is for young people inside and outside of the home as well. It includes online learning, as well as an inability to access safe spaces for young people. Hard to meet basic needs. We saw, didn't we, the campaign by Marcus Rashford around free school meals, which gained real momentum, and it was incredible how tweets from a footballer could change government policy, it seemed almost like on a weekly basis. But what it was about at its core was this recognition that there were children and families in financial hardship, loss of jobs, massively reduced income, Lack of digital access, which was access to the world, wasn't it, essentially, that had been exacerbated by COVID. And those issues still remain, they're still there. Reduced access to education activities where there was a lack of stimulation and positive engagement. So here I am talking about community activities, cultural capital, theatre, high ropes, all of that had to stop. So we maintained our programs online, and in about the last week or so, we have been rapidly booking venues, organising trips for after June the 21st. And there's so much that's been lost in terms of opportunities for young people. And I think if you can really motivate yourselves and your staff to get access to those opportunities for young people when it's safe to do so, I think that will be incredibly rewarding, and it's incredibly needed. Of course, there's risk to physical well-being. There's issues around nutrition. If income's full, it affects your nutrition. If you're not going to the shops for food shopping, or you're worried about that, obviously that can be affected. Lack of physical activity for fitness. It was a couple of weeks back when children's football was back on. I was walking the dog, and there was a young, I think it must have been under 10s playing football. I knew one of the parents. I just stopped and watched the game because it was so nice seeing young people run around, kick a ball, have a laugh, because it just seemed to have been missing for so long from that area. And getting young people to re-engage with those kind of clubs and giving them opportunities is really important. And then finally, on the survey that Children in Need did, concern for the future. Educational transition was highlighted as a time of real worry. Am I making the right decision? Can I afford to take part in higher education? My son's at Manchester University at the minute, it's in the second year, and he had a wobble in the middle of COVID. Why am I paying these fees? What's the point? It's not the experience I signed up for. He's come through that, 2 or 3 others haven't, but those worries are there for many, many students. Jobs and job prospects obviously been hit, opportunities for young people to start out in restaurants or bars or whatever it is. These are the jobs that have been hit, and it's young people that statistically have been really affected by the lockdown. So there are many, many challenges there that academic institutions and ourselves and individuals will face as an outcome of COVID, and they're not going to go away anytime soon, really, despite the lifting. So I've just given you really a brief overview there about the variety of projects that we do. If you're interested in contacting us or finding out more about what we do or how you can adapt the projects or finding out about the outcomes of them, feel free to contact us. Jade will share those contact details in due course. It's an investment really in time and also in terms of capital to deliver these programs. We will fundraise for them, so that doesn't affect the institutions that we work with, but it does take commitment to finding opportunities for young people, engaging them, keeping them engaged, and working with members of the community that you may not otherwise have worked with. And if you build those bridges, especially now, we as an organisation have seen it make such a difference to young people, and I would just strongly encourage you to continue to do that in your institutions, but it's safe to do so. I just want to say thank you very much for giving up your time this evening. I really do appreciate that. If it makes a difference to one young person, then it's been worthwhile. Jade, many thanks for your time in helping to get this organised and set up. I know it's been quite a while in the production, and if you think it's useful for a school or college, then I'll be more than happy to give you more details, and I'm happy to answer any questions that may arise, Jade. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Peter. Really informative session. As Peter said, if you do have any questions, please do fire them through to us now. We've received one whilst you were talking, Peter, so I'll read that out now whilst we give people a chance to type any questions they might have. Okay. So first question, which is, thank you, Peter, firstly. But do you have any advice on how to help young people with the issues beyond school and university? So looking at their transition into work. And they've also said thank you for sharing the amazing work that you do. Oh, well, that's delighted to. I think that the key thing is for us, I'm not a world expert on apprenticeships. I'm not a world expert on all I've done many UCAS applications as director of sixth form, but things change, don't they, as time passes. So we work with students.
So we got students in to talk to the young people themselves. We've made sure that because a common refrain I hear from young people who would be well suited to higher education, have the academic ability, is they're worried about the costs of that, and they may have had very, very little guidance around the realities around the costs and how that works and the support available and how that works out. But also around the fact that there are different types of apprenticeship. To say, I'm going to get an apprenticeship. So the example of Jack there just working, as a security guard, because he made the assumption that I can only do a job that I can do now in the future. So anything else is close. The fact that most jobs haven't even been invented yet that they could go on to do. So I think it's really about pulling in partners. So we worked with the apprenticeship hub, we tie in university, we get some financial support, we work with employers. It's about listening to the young people and then bringing in contacts to support you with that. And you'll find that people are only too happy to give their time, to give support, to mentor, to give constructive advice. We're redesigning our website at the moment to make it much more interactive, and so we're going to take young people to work and develop our website with the actual website developer themselves, so to engage young people where there's opportunities. But I think it may be something you could bring together, invite local employers, apprenticeship providers into your school, make some contacts, show them around, get them to meet some young people, engage them with your institution, and that itself would also provide some opportunities going forward. We're able to build those contacts, and it's things that the young people haven't got access to, and that we can build those bridges really going forward.
Great, thank you. No other questions have come through as of yet. Somebody's just thanked you for an informative session, so I'll just give you that feedback whilst we're on the call.
It's a pleasure, Jade. Thank you.
Like I said, we'll do a last shout out. If you do have any questions, do fire them over and we'll read them out. Thank you so much for that session, Peter. I'm just going to pop you, let's see, back on the screen. It doesn't look like anything else is coming through, so what we'll do is we can wrap the session up there. I'll put myself back on the screen so you can see who's speaking. Hello. Yeah, so thank you so much for those of you that have attended, and I can see you're all still with us right till the end, which is great. Thank you so much to Peter for that session. Nice. I know there was a lot of links in there and a lot of information, so we'll make sure that you get a copy of Peter's slides so that you can have access to all that information. And again, Peter's contact details are on there, so if this is something you'd like to follow up and chat to him about opportunities that are available, I'm sure you're more than welcome, Peter, out there to contact you.
No problem at all.
Great, fab. So yeah, thank you very much everybody that's attended today. Like I mentioned earlier, we do have sessions running Wednesday, Thursday and Friday of this week, so if you'd like to attend any of the sessions, please do just pop onto our event calendar and book onto any sessions. But we will hopefully see you at an event sometime in the soon, and thank you very much for joining us. I can see everybody else they're still here that joined us, which is great, so thank you so much for sticking with us right till the end, and yeah, we'll hopefully see you at an event soon. So thank you so much, Peter. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, pleasure. Take care.
Bye.